Okay, so picture this. You're an English teacher in a remote village, like way out there
Right.
in Nepal. Your students are like totally eager to learn,
Yeah.
but resources are super limited, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you even begin to bring like the whole world of English to them? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds fascinating.
It is. We've got some research fresh from the 2024 ELTAI conference. You know, that's the big English Language Teachers Association of Nepal Shindig. And it's all about how ELT teachers, those are English language teachers, by the way, are using digital tools. But here's the thing. It's in rural areas.
Wait, that's kind of surprising, isn't it? You don't usually think of like
Cool, boy.
cutting edge tech and remote villages together.
Right.
You know, when we talk about Nepal, we often think about the Himalayas, the culture.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
But this is what makes this research so important.
Totally.
It gives us a real glimpse into how these teachers are not just like keeping up, but actually leading the way in using tech to bridge that digital divide we always hear about.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah. And especially after COVID, education's like completely changed. It's been a huge shift. And this research, it kind of gives us a sneak peek into how things are evolving, you know, on the ground.
Absolutely. And you know what's really cool about this particular study?
What's that?
It focuses on the Sidhu Paskim province, one of the most remote and underdeveloped regions in Nepal. So we're talking like really getting into the heart of how teachers are using technology in a challenging environment.
I see. So it's not just about the tech itself. It's about the context too, right?
Exactly. The researchers really wanted to understand the teachers' personal stories, not just like numbers and statistics, but like what's actually working, what's not working, and how are these teachers like figuring it all out, navigating these challenges.
So it's like a real ground level view of how technology is being used and what the impact is on teachers and their students.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And to make sense of all this, they use something called the DigCompEdu framework.
Oh, I've heard of that. But for listeners who might not be familiar, could you give us a little rundown?
Sure. So basically, DigCompEdu, it's like a roadmap for understanding the digital skills teachers need to be really effective in the classroom.
Okay, so it's not just about knowing how to like turn on a computer. It's about using tech in a way that actually helps students learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as we go through the findings, you'll see how this framework highlights both the strengths and the areas where teachers might need a little more support.
I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Me too. So one of the first things that jumped out at me was how teachers are using technology for like the basic stuff, connecting and collaborating, you know.
Like what?
Like they're using tools like WhatsApp and Zoom.
Wait, really?
I know, it may sound pretty basic.
Yeah, those are pretty common.
Right, but in this context, it's
think,
actually pretty revolutionary.
Right, because in these remote areas, even having access to those tools can be a big deal.
Exactly. And one teacher, they were labeled TE2 in the study, shared how they use WhatsApp to create these class groups and keep students informed about, you know, updates and assignments. Like, hey, don't forget about that homework.
It's kind of like a digital lifeline in a way.
Totally. And it shows how these teachers are taking these like readily available tools.
Stuff everyone already has.
Yeah. And adapting them to their needs.
So resourceful. I love it.
Right. And this kind of resourcefulness is something we see a lot in the study.
I bet. It makes you realize that innovation, it doesn't always have to be about like fancy gadgets and expensive software. It's about finding creative solutions with what you have.
Totally. Speaking of creativity, let's talk about digital resources.
Okay, yeah, because finding good materials online, it's a whole other challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. But the teachers in this study, they're really stepping up. They're curating materials, creating their own content.
Wow.
And sharing resources with students.
That's impressive.
It is, but it's not without its challenges.
I can imagine. What kind of challenges?
Well, one teacher, TE1, talked about how important it is to verify sources.
Of course. Yeah, you don't want to be teaching kids the wrong stuff.
Right. And also making sure the materials are, you know, high quality.
Makes sense.
But then they admitted to not always following copyright rules perfectly.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was a real, like, oops moment. I think a lot of us can relate to that.
I've definitely been there. Especially with so much information online, it's easy to get confused sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
It just shows that even with the best intentions, there are gray areas when it comes to digital resources.
Absolutely. Especially in environments where access to training and support is, you know, limited.
Right. So what about the actual teaching and learning? How are these teachers using digital tools in their classrooms?
Okay, so this is where it gets really exciting. The study found that teachers are using a diverse range of tools to make their lessons engaging and interactive.
Cool. Like what? Give me some examples.
So TE2, the one we talked about before who uses WhatsApp, they mentioned using everything from mobile devices and projectors to interactive whiteboards and even software programs.
Wow, that's quite a mix.
Right. And get this, they even incorporate social media.
Oh, real?
Yeah, for discussions and group projects.
That's pretty innovative.
It is. They even use, like the standards, Google Docs and Google Slides.
Oh, yeah, those are becoming staples in classrooms everywhere.
Exactly. So it's fascinating to see how global trends are being adopted and adapted in such a unique context.
It really shows that despite the challenges, these teachers are committed to providing their students with, like, a 21st century learning experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
But it's not all sunshine and roses.
Oh.
Another teacher, TE1, acknowledged that while they encourage students to explore online resources, they haven't fully embraced personalized learning.
That's interesting, because personalized learning, it's like a huge buzzword in education these days.
It is. And it really highlights that. Even the most dedicated teachers are still on this continuous learning journey, you know.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that there's always room to grow and adapt.
Okay, let's shift gears for a sec and talk about assessment.
Okay, yeah, because how do you even assess learning when you're using all these different digital tools?
Right. So this is where we see a real mix of approaches. Some teachers, like TE3, they fully embraced digital tools for quizzes, assignments, and feedback.
So they're like all in on the digital assessment train.
Totally. They even use platforms like MS Teams to conduct assessments during remote learning.
Makes sense, especially with the whole COVID situation.
Right. It shows how the pandemic forced educators to adapt and find new ways to assess learning.
And for some, those changes have stuck around.
Exactly. But not all teachers are at the same level of comfort with, like, digital assessment.
I can imagine. It's a big change.
It is. And remember TE1, the teacher who was honest about the copyright thing.
Yeah, the oops moment.
Yeah. Well, they also admitted that they haven't explored digital assessment as much as they'd like.
That's understandable.
It's a good reminder that professional development needs to be ongoing.
Absolutely. And it has to be tailored to individual needs.
Totally. Okay, let's move on to the next area of the DigCompEdu framework, which is all about empowering learners.
Empowering learners. Okay. What does that mean in this context?
So this is where TE1 really shines.
Oh.
They talked about providing Wi-Fi access and devices for students who don't have their own.
Wow, that's a real commitment to equity.
Right. It shows that even in resource-constrained environments, teachers are prioritizing inclusivity and making sure all students have the opportunity to benefit from technology.
That's really inspiring.
It is. And speaking of opportunities, the final area of the DigCompEdu framework is facilitating learners' digital competence.
Okay, digital competence. So like teaching them how to use technology responsibly.
Exactly. It's all about helping students become
responsible
and discerning digital citizens.
That's so important these days with all the misinformation flying around online.
Right. It's like a critical 21st century skill. And it seems like such a critical skill these days, you know, like with misinformation and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's everywhere.
It's scary how quickly stuff spreads online.
I know, right.
And it's hard to know what to trust.
Exactly. So in this study, one teacher really emphasized how important it is to teach students how to, you know, evaluate a source, see if it's credible.
Oh, for sure.
And they even use hands-on activities to teach about, like copyright and licenses.
Wow, that's going the extra mile.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's really proactive.
Yeah, it is.
But it sounds like it's not always easy to, like, get the students on board with all this.
Yeah, I can imagine kids these days, they're so used to just, like, Googling everything.
Right.
They don't always think about, like, where the information's coming from or if it's even accurate.
Exactly. And one teacher mentioned they saw students just copy-pasting information from the internet.
Yeah.
Without really analyzing it.
Yeah.
Or even understanding it.
It's like they think the internet is like this magic answer box.
Yeah.
You just type in your question and boom, the answer appears.
Exactly. But it makes you wonder.
What's that?
Are we doing enough? Like, are we really equipping students with the critical thinking skills they need for this digital world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It's something that educators everywhere are grappling with.
For sure.
This whole conversation, it's got me thinking about the bigger picture.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are the broader implications of this research? What can we learn from these teachers in Nepal?
That's a great question.
That might be applicable,
Right.
to other contexts.
Right, because what works in Nepal might not work in, say, New York City.
Exactly.
So what do you think?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways is the importance of context.
Oh, context, yeah.
Like technology.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not. I mean, think about it. A teacher in a rural village in Nepal, they have totally different needs than a teacher in a high-tech school in Tokyo.
Exactly. We need to understand the specific needs and challenges of each community before we can effectively integrate technology into education.
I totally agree. It's like you can't just throw technology at a problem and expect it to magically solve everything.
Right. It's like that old saying.
That's one.
Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
I love that saying.
It's so true. And in this case, it's not just about giving teachers and students access to technology.
It's about something more.
It's about empowering them to use it.
Yeah.
In a way that's meaningful and sustainable.
Oh, I like that. Empowering them.
And that's where teacher training comes in.
Yes, training.
Professional development, because this study highlighted areas where teachers said they needed more support.
Like what?
Things like digital assessment, personalized learning.
I see. So it's not enough to just give teachers the devices and software.
Right.
They need to know how to use them effectively.
Exactly. We need to invest in ongoing training.
Right.
That helps them develop the skills and the confidence to use those tools effectively.
And that training, it has to be relevant to their context.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't just take a training program designed for urban teachers and expect it to work for teachers in rural Nepal.
Exactly. The training needs to be grounded in the realities of the teachers' lives and their work.
Make it practical, hands-on, something they can actually use in their classrooms.
Totally.
It's all about meeting them where they are.
It's easy to get caught up in the technology itself.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's all about the people.
The human element.
Exactly. It's about empowering teachers to be the best they can be and creating engaging learning experiences for students.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
This research really shows that. It's about finding that balance between the potential of technology and the human element of education.
It's a beautiful thing when it all comes together.
It is.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the challenges, the triumphs, and the incredible resourcefulness of ELT teachers in rural Nepal. But now we want to turn it over to you, our listener. So imagine you're put in charge of designing this teacher training program, specifically for these ELT teachers.
Yeah.
Way out there in rural Nepal. What would be your top priorities based on, everything we've learned from this research?
That's a tough one. But a good one. Let me think. Well, first off, I'd say it's all about finding that sweet spot between, what's practical and what's aspirational. They're we need to give them the skills to use the tools they already have, right? WhatsApp, social media, show them how to make those work for teaching.
Make it real for them.
Exactly. But we can't stop there.
Right.
We also got to help them understand the bigger picture, what is digital literacy?
Yeah.
How does copyright work? How can we personalize learning?
Give them the foundation.
Yeah. So they can go beyond just using the tools and actually create those, truly engaging experiences for their students.
It's like we're giving them a toolbox filled with all these tools, some familiar, some brand new. And then we got to show them how to use each one to build something amazing.
Yes. That's a great analogy.
And it's not just about the tools themselves, right?
Oh, right.
It's about fostering that mindset of continuous learning, always adapting.
Because technology never stands still.
Never. It's constantly changing.
And these teachers, they need to feel empowered to keep up with all the changes, experiment with new things.
Be fearless.
Exactly.
It makes me think back to that teacher, the one who admitted to, not always following copyright rules.
Oh, yeah.
What if that training program not only taught them the rules, but also gave them access to, open educational resources, Creative Commons materials?
Oh, that's a great idea.
It would address, both the practical needs and the ethical considerations.
It's a win-win.
It is. It's about finding solutions that are sustainable and ethical.
Absolutely.
You know, this whole conversation, it's been so eye-opening for me.
Me too.
I thought we'd be talking about, like, the latest gadgets, cutting-edge tech.
Right.
But it's been about so much more than that.
It really has.
It's about the human spirit, like
Yep.
that drive to innovate.
I love that.
And the dedication of these teachers
Yeah.
who are going above and beyond to give their students the best possible education.
No matter what.
No matter what. It's incredible.
It's inspiring.
It is.
These teachers, they're like pioneers.
They are.
Finding ways to bridge that digital divide, transforming learning in their communities.
And their stories. They remind us that technology, it can connect us, empower us.
Inspire us.
Even in the most remote corners of the world.
It's amazing what they're doing.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've seen how these teachers in Nepal are using technology to overcome challenges, create opportunities.
It's incredible.
So we challenge you, our listener, to think about this. What can we learn from their experiences that we can apply to our own lives, our own work, whether we're educators, students, or just lifelong learners?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves.
Because the world's becoming more and more interconnected.
And the lessons we can learn from these teachers, they're relevant to all of us.
They are. Their stories show us that. With a little creativity, a lot of determination, and a willingness to, embrace new possibilities. We can all use technology to make a difference.
To make the world a better place.
Exactly.
Thank you for taking us on this journey.
Oh, thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you found this deep dive as inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.